We are excited today. We're excited to have Dr. Russ Peterman from University of Christian Church in Fort Worth, Texas. And we want to spend some time talking to Dr. Russ today, because he's one of our favorite clients this last season, at least one of my favorite clients. I've had a chance to go on site, be with him and the team for a season on our upfront process. And we just been loving the process, working with you guys. And so we're excited to have you on a call and just to share your experience. And we're very much in the process, so we're not at the end of anything yet, but we know that the process has been a lot of fun. And so thanks, Dr. Russ, for taking some time and sharing your experience and some of what's going on at UCC with us today.
Glad to be a part of it. Thanks for the invite.
And so just a little bit about Dr. Russ, as he's the pastor of University of Christian Church right here in Fort Worth. I'm in Fort Worth now, so down the street from me. And so their mission is to be an open-hearted church for curious-minded people. Dr. Russ is a lifelong member of the Disciples of Christ denomination and had in the past served on their board. And then he taught homiletics at the Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley, California. And both him and I wish we had Berkeley, California weather today. That's for sure. 97 degrees and humid it is today. And so he's actively serving the community of Fort Worth, the Compassion Fort Worth Task Force, and just looking forward to seeing what's going on and catch up to speed on what's happening. So question I have for you, Dr. Russ, is University of Christian Church is connected to the campus of TCU, which is Texas Christian University, where you graduated your undergraduate. And I mean, you guys are right there. I mean, I've been there on campus. You're right across the parking lot from literally being on campus. So share with us a little bit about some of your college experience, but maybe how that was even connected to your experience with UCC while you were a student there at the college.
Yeah, so University Christian Church actually started out as the university's church for the first 50 years or so when TCU was in existence. And it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And so there was no other churches for faculty and staff and students to go. So they kind of formed a university church. And so for the first 50 years of our existence, we were the university church. And then when we moved to Fort Worth and did some other things, and then they kind of gave us this property and community around us expanded. And so now we're serving not just the university, but we try to be really intentional about reaching out to our college students as well. I was at TCU, did my undergraduate here, came to university a couple times. It's a pretty big church. My church, my home church, was much smaller. So when I came in, I had my eyes wide open, but it was pretty overwhelming. I also, it was here in a worship service that I had a very profound call experience upon my life. And so for me, as I said, even in my interview, when I first was interviewing for this role, that UCC is kind of sacred ground. I always feel the need, the desire to sort of take off my shoes when I walk in the sanctuary, because it really is a place where I encounter the holy and the sacred in a very real and tangible way. And so, I have always looked upon this congregation as being an amazing church. It's got a great reputation within our denomination, is one of the flagship churches. About 7-8 years ago, my wife and I came back to Fort Worth. We were living in California at the time, came back to Fort Worth to go to a TCU football game. And the following day on Sunday morning, we came to worship here. And as the organs started playing and the people started gathering, I kind of leaned over to my wife, Kelly, and I said, just so you know, this is my dream job. And she just kind of looked around and she thought, I could see that. And that was the last we ever had of that conversation, the last time either of us ever spoke of it, until UCC reached out to me about 4 years ago about coming to serve as their pastor and asked me if I'd put my name in to be considered. So this is in many ways sort of a dream come true for me.
Well, how surreal is that experience, to think back and then now to be in a position where we're having this call and talking about building the future of the church. What an exciting place to be, and how God just prompts us and then he brings us things back around and doesn't forget. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, your church's history, I mean, it's intimately connected. As you said, it is founded as the Church of Texas Christian University. So tell me a little bit about how just the connection between your church and your community? Maybe kind of go back a little bit in some of the history and talk about maybe how, the influence of the church has been, integral part of the city of Fort Worth.
It's the fascinating thing that I've noticed in the 3.5 years that I've been here is that University Christian Church is known throughout Fort Worth as UCC. This is the only church that I've ever been a part of, that I've even aware of, that is known throughout the community by an acronym, right?
Yeah.
So I walk into a restaurant or whatever, and somebody will come up and say, "Hey, aren't you, whatever?" And I'll say, "Yeah, I'm the senior minister at University Christian Church." And immediately they'll say, "How long have you been at UCC?" So even folks that aren't connected with the church know UCC as being this really strong reputation in the city of Fort Worth. There's a great story. So John F. Kennedy, the story. John F. Kennedy spent his last night here in Fort Worth, and there was a big breakfast for the Chamber of Commerce that hosted Kennedy before he got on the flight to go over to Dallas, which is, I don't know why they flew. It's a half an hour drive, but they had this thing, and the senior minister, Granville Walker, the senior minister of UCC, gave the introduction, gave the invocation at that breakfast. And as they were kind of introducing all the folks, the dignitaries at the head table, they said, "This is so-and-so, this is so-and-so, here's the mayor of Fort Worth," and all this other kind of stuff. And they got down to Granville Walker and they said, "And of course, Dr. Walker." They didn't say he's the senior minister at UCC. They didn't do anything. The person that told me this story, I said, "Wow, they missed such a great opportunity." And he said, No, Russ, you're missing the point. He said, in 1963, Granville Walker University Christian Church needed no introduction in the city of Fort Worth, right? Because we were so integrated into the life of the community, in part because of the civil rights movement, because of a lot of things that we were active in at that time. So everybody knew of UCC at that time.
Sure. Well, I know even it being the mayor's church and what you just shared with just kind of maybe some of the political influence and connection. Share with me, catch us up to speed a little bit on how the influence is with the city now. I know during the pandemic, it opened up some needs. So just share with us some of those opportunities that have opened up in this last season since you've been there for you to serve the community in some different ways.
The truth is, I mentioned, back in 1963, UCC needed no introduction. And I think still a lot of folks look at UCC as this great institution, but I think in a lot of ways, a lot of our shine had worn off a little bit. Our reputation, I guess maybe you could say it this way, we had been relying on our reputation way too much. And so one of the things that I've been working on is to get back out there and to serve the community around us, and to be a part of what God is doing rather than expecting people to come to us. Because we had that reputation, we had this beautiful sanctuary that's known throughout. It's where everybody wants to get married. But there was still this sense of, well, all we have to do is open the doors, right? Folks flock to us. And that wasn't the case anymore. And there's we haven't been for the last couple decades sort of the church in Fort Worth anymore. And so I think it's been really important for us to get back out there and to start serving the community a whole lot more than what we've done. And so that's been one of the areas of emphasis, especially during this pandemic. We reconfigured our staff like I'm sure 98% of the churches that you are doing, to put more emphasis on mission and outreach, and to be able to do things that we can do, focus on making sure that people have their needs met in terms of feeding the hungry, but also serving the schools around us. We have this incredible ministry called the Children's Closet, where we provide school uniforms that are required here in the Fort Worth ISD to low-income students. And so we have, over the years, given out hundreds of thousands of school uniforms to students that otherwise would really struggle to do that. So we've been working really hard about getting out there, and rather than staying inside and expecting people to come to us.
Sure. Well, I know something you just mentioned, I think is just really important, even in our journey with you, is when you came to us, you know, you were at a place where it was more about reputation in the past and people that have been influential in the past and how it's impacted your community in the past. But when you took over the church, you know, I know I've met several of your team members. We've spent a few days with you in person. We've talked to them on a weekly basis. So you came in with a great team. You came in with, in a sense, your dream job. But speaking to a little bit about kind of where things were when you came and its need for fresh vision, and just tell us about that coming in and recognizing that we need to tell, you know, a story of the future and reaching people who we've yet to reach.
Yeah. There has been the first year or so that I was here, it was all about, the phrase that I heard more than anything else was, we used to.
Yeah.
We used to do this. We used to do that. And so, you know, one of the things that we looked at not long after I got there was our vision statement, right? You know, the importance of having a clear, concise vision statement that is forward looking about where we want to be. But one of the things that I noticed is that it talked about our history and our DNA and our connection to the university. Well, that was 150 years ago. Right. So
right.
We really wanted to be more outwardly focused, more forward thinking, as opposed to relying on that reputation and being, you know, what's the old adage, you know, a lot of congregations are driving into the future with both hands on the steering wheel, but meanwhile they're looking in the rearview mirror, seeing what used to be. And so I've been really working really hard about helping us articulate not just who we are, but who God's calling us to be in the future, and to be forward looking instead of looking at the past and relying on a reputation. So that's been one of the areas of emphasis, and so we've redone our mission statement, our vision statement, we've articulated our core values, and we've been working really hard around that too.
And share us a little bit how you communicate that when you come in and you communicate. And what I hear from people that we've talked to, we've interviewed, we were there, you know, we've interviewed key volunteers, people that have been there for a long time, people that are new to the church, and also two staff members. And it seems like you've just really made just an intentional connection, you know, with your mission, your vision, your values. But share with me, and those who are maybe watching today, just some of those prompts, some of those cues. What are some things that you intentionally say, you know, to connect, to be intentionally connecting to your audience, where you want them to go, you know, when you're communicating from the pulpit, when you're communicating one-on-one? What are some things that you're thinking through maybe more intentionally in terms of how you communicate, wanting to convey the heart of really who UCC is becoming?
You know, one of our core values that we articulated in the last few years was vulnerability, that we can be as vulnerable as we can, to acknowledge that we may not have all the answers, that we're a journey church, right? That we're all about figuring it out together as we move forward, that there are some core principles, there are some parts of what it means to be a disciple that are unequivocal, but at the same time, there's a lot of ambiguity in life. And so we have embraced this notion of vulnerability, but also curiosity. And I've just been trying as much as I can to embody those in terms of my vulnerability, but also my curiosity, and ask the big questions. You know, my preaching style is a whole lot more about asking the bigger questions and saying, you know, we're all in this together to figure it out, than to give those easy answers. You know, one thing that I did, my mom is from a small town in Texas. And so growing up, I used to hear all the time, you know, my mom, dear sweet woman, and she would say to me all the time, Russ, if I told you lately how much I love you, and you know, when you're a teenager, yes, mom, you told me at breakfast, you know, yes, mom, you told me. I stood up to my congregation about a year ago, and I just said, you know what? And I told that story about my mom, and I said, University Christian Church, have I told you lately how much I love you? And it was just this moment when, you know, somebody said, I don't know that our senior ministers ever said that before, right? I mean, that this is a big pulpit, you know, in this, and, you know, so my style has been much more trying to be as vulnerable as I can, to embrace that core value as much as anything else, and to tell this congregation that they are loved as they are, not as they think they should be. So that's been one of the things I've been working hard at too.
Yeah, and we love it. We love every time our team, we hear that messaging and we lean in. Yeah. And we feel the connection and the vulnerability. So appreciate
you guys have done an amazing job of taking that and giving us language and giving us imagery around that to really live into that and lean into it. And it's been really helpful in a lot of different ways.
Well, let's talk more about that. I mean, when you came to us, I mean, you had a strong sense of your mission, vision, your value. So now we have the foundation to build on. We've got kind of the rails, which this train of moving forward is now beginning to move forward, and you sense that, and you saw that, and you hear it from the team. But then that's kind of really where we've came into the process, and then we've got to, first thing we were able to do is work with you through an on-site local consultation. Myself and another team member flew out and spent a couple of days with you guys. Then we started the process of working on your strategic messaging, which you've talked about. How do we now create language around our culture? And language is inviting the people and just being authentic to who we are, but clear to the people that we're reaching. And so visual identity and brand and logos and fonts and textures. And now we're in the web development phase. We're very much in this process with you right now. But just speaking to share with those maybe watching today, share with us a little bit about that process has been like, working with our team, through that process.
You guys have been so incredibly helpful in helping us change our position in terms of, let me back up just a little bit. In the midst of the pandemic, when all of our ministry had shifted to digital, we became very clear very quickly that strategic communication, the strategic messaging was more important now than ever, right? Mm-hmm.
Right.
We also came to the realization that was one of our greatest, that was our most glaring weakness, right? Mm. Because we had been relying on our reputation for far too long, we had become sort of inwardly focused and helped us say, here's who we are. But at the same time, we had not been outwardly focused enough to say, these are the people that we're called to reach. Here are some of their hopes, and here's what some of their fears are, and some of their negative emotional tractors that we can say, here's the message that we have for them. That became much more about those that we're called to reach as opposed to us. And here's who, I think it's important to be very clear and concise about who we are, but at the same time, to be outwardly focused enough to say, here's what we think you would love about our church if we could communicate with you, and how do we reach out to those folks, and to be much more outwardly focused. And so that has been that paradigm shift has been incredibly helpful for us, and to help us, recognize that this is not about us,
Sure.
So it's all about those people that God is calling us to reach. And so that's been really helpful. And you guys have been so great with fresh perspective and fresh eyes to be able to say, there's help us articulate that in a lot of different ways. Disciples, mainline Protestant folks like us, those 7 mainline denominations, we're not all that great at evangelism. We're not real great about telling our story. We've been relying for far too long on just sort of the attractional model of church, right? You just do the best you can and hope that you can attract people to you. But that doesn't work in this culture. And folks like you that are experts when it comes to evangelism and marketing and messaging has really helped us be much more outwardly focused and focus on those we're trying to reach rather than tooting our own horn.
Sure. No, that's so good. Yeah. And yeah, right in the middle of a global pandemic.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah. I mean, it's
fascinating is in some of the rollout stuff that we've been doing, I had a conversation with one of our leaders who said, what a perfect time to do all this, right? Sure. Because all of that other stuff that usually takes up all your time and all those committee meetings and all those other stuff, you're not doing right now. So what better time when you have stripped away everything that you thought what it meant to be church, and all of a sudden now you're left with this message. And if you're not clear, if you're not concise, if you're not able to articulate, what God is calling you to be about, what better time than in the midst of a pandemic when everything else has been stripped away to use that as a time to get really clear about who we are, about who we're called to reach, and about what our message is that will reach those folks.
So true. We talk to churches all on a daily basis, and churches that maybe had a certain model or a certain way of reaching people or certain opportunities to reach people. Those conversations are like, we're trying to refigure this all out. It doesn't have to look, and I think it's freeing to know that it doesn't have to look like the past, that we can reinvent ourselves. Yeah. Everybody is looking to reinvent themselves. In the church, I think when the church takes a deeper dive and really thinks inward that way, I think it produces these powerful opportunities that we're talking about in our partnership. And you mentioned rollout. So speak to us a little bit. I know we've talked about your strategic messaging. You've been able to get clear on that, to communicate that, to your teams, to your church congregation and to the community, and now with your visual identity. So we're talking just within a matter of weeks of just being able to kind of articulate that and get that out to the world. So share with us how that's been received. Share with us a little bit of that process now, where we're now actually communicating, these things that we've been working on and partnering with.
Yeah, it has been incredibly well received. People are loving it. Messaging, the visual identity, all that kind of stuff. They're so hungry. They keep asking me every week, so when's the new website going to be there? When's our new digital identity about to be launched? They're loving it. And one of the things that you all helped me see was that this whole process is only 10% really about the message, about the visual identity, about all that stuff. It's 90% about the vision, right? And if you can articulate what that vision is, that 10% is what brings all of that 90% into fruition and makes it happen and come alive in new ways. People are loving it. The other thing that has been really fascinating in all of this, there have been some of our folks, and we're 150 years old as a congregation. Not all of our folks are millennials. Is that a nice way to say that? And I've had a couple of those folks say, I'm not sure that I like the new visual identity. But what's been great is I've been able to say, that's okay, Mrs. Doubtfire, you're not our target audience. This is not about us anymore. Right. Sure. This is about those that we're called to reach, and that can just kind of step back and go, I get it. And so it's been really well received. So yeah, I'm in the middle of a sermon series, a worship series, where we're rolling it all out. And just this last week, I talked about our core story and some of those other things, and they are loving it. We'll put together a great video. We had it professionally done in terms of our core story and sort of articulating what that is, and folks are just loving it.
We love it. I love it. Matter of fact, I love how you took almost verbatim, just took that strategic messaging, that core story that's part of that process, and you just put it to this amazing, beautiful visual identity that really connects. And man, we shared it with the team internal, and we just, wow, what a home run. If it connected with us, how much deeper is that going to connect with those who really need the message, who are in your local community? So great job, just really taking that messaging and creating content with it.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, here it is. We're this conversation with us started right in the middle of the global pandemic. When we went down there for our on-site last fall, church was shut down and suspended, meeting online, opened back up, shut back down again. But I think now church is in a different season. Society's in a different season with all of that. And the vision doesn't stop with what we just talked about with the brand rollout, but it's also with the new service, 10-10. Can you talk to us a little bit about the heart and the vision for 10-10? And then how do you see that as really part of the future, envisioning the future and telling the future stories told of lives changed for UCC?
So yeah, so we are as a university church, as a 150-year-old church, we are very traditional in our worship service that we have, worship services that we have now. It's the smells and bells and the big loud organ and the huge choir and all that kind of stuff. I wear a robe on Sundays. And we're very traditional, and we're also very aware that that doesn't speak to everybody. And if we're going to be across the street from a university, if we're going to try and reach out some of those younger generations, we're going to need to sort of reinvent ourselves to an extent. And so we're starting a new service that we're calling 1010. It's based on my favorite scripture verse, John 10:10. I came that they may have life and life to the fullest, life abundantly. And so we're gonna call it 1010. I'll give you 3 guesses of what time the service is going to be on Sunday mornings, but the first 2 don't count. And so it's going to be at 1010, and it's going to be more of a coffee house type feel, and much more, acoustic guitar and all that, as opposed to the big organ and the big choir and all that kind of stuff. And so we're really excited about it. There's a lot of energy and a lot of excitement, and you all have helped us. We were about to kick this off right before we shut down.
That's right.
And we thought about, well, maybe we should start it as an online service, right? Kind of grow this congregation, this following online. And you guys were the ones that said, whoa, wait. What about if we're going to be rolling out this new brand, if we're helping you sort of reinvent yourself, rather than have this service and this new sort of brand rollout, what if you did it all as part of the same? And so this new service comes out of this new strategic messaging. And we all kind of looked around and thought, yeah, exactly. I mean, when you all presented that to us, that was about a 30-second conversation after that. And went, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So all of this is all intertwined and all a part of this new re-envisioning for the future of University Christian Church. And so August 15th, we're going to launch this new service, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, it's going to be so exciting. I'm looking forward to being there and being a part of it myself. And
hey, you're in Fort Worth, man. Come on down. Part of it.
Yeah, I'll definitely come down. I'll wear the shirt and everything. But
there you go. The music could be good. I don't know about the sermon. We'll have to, I make no promises about that, but everything else will be awesome.
Yeah, we'll see how much the robe plays into the superpower of preaching anointing, right? That's
right. I'm gonna have to do wardrobe changes first time ever on Sunday morning. So.
Well, see, because now there's gonna be plenty of coffee, so there can't be any excuses for people unless it's bad coffee. Why people may be tuned out, but I think that's going to be opposite the case. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Well, just kind of as we kind of wrap up our call today, I would just love just your thoughts to other pastors out there, other pastors that might be where you were 2-3 years ago. Hey, we're realigning. Maybe I've come in to be part of. As a pastor, coming to be part of that change agent for the future, telling that story, or just a pastor's been there for a long time that just knows that there's some changes need to happen for us to be able to be the church, not who we were, but the church we know that Jesus needs us to be to meet the needs of the future. What's maybe 1 or 2 things, Dr. Russ, that you would just share with the pastors, just maybe considering the process, thinking about change, thinking about the future of their church?
One of the things that as we started thinking about articulating who we believe God is calling us to be moving forward, not just who we've been, it became really clear really quickly that we don't know what we don't know, right? That I can hire somebody to create a new logo for us, right? That's catchy. That looks cool. I like it. But this is so much bigger than that. This is so much more, so much wider and deeper than that. And that it's really about, like I said, it's that 90% of the vision, taking this understanding of who we believe God is calling us to do, and then being able to cut through all of the noise of the culture and the society to be able to clearly articulate that. And I had no idea how to do that. Right. I mean, I can preach. I can tell you if I can look at a logo, I go, well, I don't like that one, but I like that one.
Sure,
but I couldn't tell you why, right, or what it meant to me. And so you all have done such an amazing job of taking it so much farther and deeper and wider, and taking it off of us and putting it all about focusing on those people that we believe that God is calling us to reach, that God has identified that these are the people that I want you to reach for the goodness of God. And so that's been so helpful for us. It really has, even in the midst of a pandemic, as we're starting to roll this out. There's been this reluctance. I know a lot of other churches, and talking to colleagues and stuff, there's this reluctance of folks to come back. That's we kind of assumed that the minute we opened up the doors that everybody would rush back, but that's not the way that it's happened, at least not in our church, and in a lot of other churches that I've talked to. But this has given us something to be excited about, right? This is drawing people to come back. It gives them that we're not just returning to the church that we were before we shut down, that we've kind of used this opportunity to kind of recreate and reimagine ourselves, so that it's not about going back to where we were, but about moving forward into the future that God has called us to be, to live into, and is imagining and dreaming for us to be. Sure. I can unequivocally say that this is the best investment that this church has made in decades, hands down.
Well, we love to hear it, and we love to hear it. And that's why we do what we do, and we love our partnership and our friendship, and the fact that we get to be a part of this process. Not now to where now you have a brand roll up, but with just with the nature of our relationship on a design retainer, to going to be able to design the future with you and partner as long as you allow us to, and help you tell the story. And now the fun begins. Now the possibilities of where this can go and who we're going to reach, and the stories now that we're telling, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So Dr. Russ, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and being with us. And we sure love our partnership and what God's doing right there in the city, right here in the city of Fort Worth.
Cameron, I can't thank you enough for all that you've done, not just today, but over the last several months. You've been a godsend to University Christian Church, and we're blessed by you guys.
Likewise, Dr. Russ. Appreciate it. Thank you.